and we are here to serve the public of Barbados and others. We are going to do the best that we can. And so I highly commend the Honorable Attorney General and the team that would have been working together. And indeed, this government, at this time when we are going through so many challenges, will bring this resolution to the fore so that Barbadians can get a relief at the end of the day, coming so close to Emancipation Day, to know the government cares about you. You care about the clients who face you every day, and therefore I highly lend my support to this resolution and pray that as time goes on and the economy improves and COVID goes back where it came from, wherever that is, and leave us in the world at peace to be able to continue to reach out, touch, and change lives around. I believe that we can do it as proud Barbadians. And those persons who are working in the civil service, we know that they're all black people. Black lives matter. And this is another chapter in showing that we care for the people who serve us day and night, including those who are serving this honorable chamber, sir. I wish to thank you for giving me the moment.
Honorable Member put on the mic. Honorable Member St. James South.
I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I rise to give my support to the bill that's before the Honourable Chamber because, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we treat our citizens with dignity. It is important that we understand and be responsive to their needs, that we see beyond using people to get work done without caring for their status, without caring for the security of tenure, without caring about the impact we have when we are tardy in regularizing their status. Mr. Speaker, Barbados is in urgent need of being able to bring the necessary reforms to the civil service in order that we can improve in our effectiveness, in our efficiency, because Barbados is now faced with very challenging conditions emerging out of the COVID. And it's going to call on every single person to make the necessary changes, to perform, to adapt to the various structures that will be made different. And how can we, in all honesty, call on our civil service when there are things that as leaders we have been negligent in relation to their well-being and to their peace of mind? If we need people to be responsive to what we are asking of them, it is very necessary that we are responsive to the needs which they have. I have to share, Mr. Speaker, that on coming into office, one of the things I was confronted with within the first 3 to 4 weeks of taking up position was to have some civil servants quietly come to my door and ask, "Ma'am, can I have a word with you?" And the story was forever the same. Even in my constituency, people would seek me out and they would put their case before me. I have been in the service for 14 years. I've been in the service for 7 years. I've been in the service for 6 years, and I have not been appointed. And to be honest, sir, I was shocked to discover that this was the case. And they shared with me the discomforts that they experienced in finding themselves in a temporary position in which they could not take their lives forward. Some felt and some believed that perhaps it was purpose work. Some felt it was a form of victimization. Very often they were unsure as to why after 14 years, why after 10 years, why after 7 years, I have not been able to be appointed? Is there a problem with my work? Is there a problem with me in my relationships with team members? What is it that I am failing in that has caused me to be singled out, not to be appointed? Mr. Speaker, I would have been unable to respond to explain to them why a government would be negligent in ensuring that people were appointed. I was unable to explain to them why it was taking so long. And what brought me great regret is I remember when the Barbados Labour Party administration in 2007, between 2006 and 2007, I remember that we had made the determination that we were going to appoint officers who had been serving for over 4 years within the service, that we were going to regularize their status. Why? Because we recognized that these persons were unable to go and get a loan. Now, in some cases, Mr. Speaker, they may have had a child that they wanted to support to go to further their education, maybe overseas, and they needed to get a loan in order to facilitate that dream of their child. But they could not, because the lending agencies were reluctant to take a risk on giving someone who was not appointed. Some were living in conditions, Mr. Speaker, where they may have been living at their mother's house. The house was now in disrepair and in urgent need of being renovated. But again, by not being appointed, they were not eligible to take on the risk of a loan, and therefore they had to continue to scotch where they were and to continue in conditions that were less than acceptable to them and their families. In other words, Mr. Speaker, what was happening to the lives of those civil servants who were awaiting appointment, it was that we were injuring their lives. We were delaying their dreams. We were denying them the advancement that they deserved. And under those conditions, Mr. Speaker, how could you expect that people would be excited about their work, that they would be excited to always and continuously give of their best when their personal lives are hedged in and made difficult and made limited because they were not appointed, and a team of persons who set themselves up as leaders of the country could not take the opportunity so to do? So in 2006, 2007, the then BLP administration had made the determination to make sure to formalize those appointments and to generate those instruments. On the election, Mr. Speaker, the change in government resulted in the new administration laying aside and not publishing in the Gazette those people whom we had agreed to have appointed. And, sir, one can only call that an act of malice. One can only call that an act of bad-mindedness, to use a Barbadian term. And we pondered as to why they would single out these civil servants who had so richly deserved their appointment, to lay those appointments aside when we had already determined that they would be formalized. All it required, Mr. Speaker, was to gazette it. Mr. Speaker, I know that we have to use our language carefully when speaking of different administrations, but I will tell you, I was deeply disappointed by an administration that had tried to characterize itself as one that cares for people, that cares for the small man, the ones who are the saviors of Barbados. To do that to thousands of civil servants, to deny them by refusing to gazette it, I think was an act of malice and unworthy of that party. That is why today I am happy, I am delighted, I am glad that we are taking the opportunity here and now to regularize the status of these workers. Sir, it is going to be too late to bring value to some people, because I've met some civil servants who are retiring this year, early next year. Too short now to bring value to them. But I'm hoping for those that it will be able to help them put things right and give them security of tenure and, more importantly, peace of mind, that they now will take the opportunity to be able to move forward with their lives and to be able to do all the things for their family that they want to do, because they now have been able to be in a job in which they are secure in relation to their job. Mr. Speaker, I feel strongly that this will be of great benefit to the civil service. I feel, sir, that achieving this particular level of appointment, of being sure of their jobs, is going now to create a different environment, a different mindset in those who are going to receive this. Sir, I believe that this will act as a powerful motivator to them, to cause them to be willing now that some of this pressure is removed from off of their heads, removed from off of their families, that when we give the call, Mr. Speaker, to rise to the occasion, to move to another level, that they would be willing to so do. One of the things, Mr. Speaker, that needs to be addressed within the civil service in relation to jobs and in relation to people is that we have to be able to find a way to change the morale of civil servants. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that when people get up on mornings, they should look forward to going to work. I believe that when they get up on mornings, they must feel a sense of importance in terms of the job that they're going to, that their job matters, and how well they execute that job means something to the well-being of people. In my former life, Mr. Speaker, I constantly told workers Barbados is only as strong as what is going on within the minds of every Barbadian every day. And that it was imperative that Barbados is able to start building a nation of persons who understand our national policy and who understand how their dreams will be accomplished because the national policy is on target, it's well executed, and therefore every person must contribute to that. I am hoping, therefore, that those now who will enjoy security of tenure, that their morale will rise and their hearts, their minds, their ears will be open to understand the critical role each of them can play in moving this nation forward. Indeed, sir, I often say that 30 people can get together and make a determination about leading a country into political independence. And once you share the message with the people and you're convincing in your answers to them the concerns they may have about going towards independence, 30 people can sit down and make that a reality. But sir, when it comes to economic independence requires that every single Barbadian puts his or her hand to the plow and work towards making Barbados a nation that is prosperous and successful. Sir, not only will the appointments create the security of tenure and therefore the peace of mind and hopefully raise the morale of our civil servants, I think that there's another benefit that is to be derived. Until one works in government, the average citizen does not have the awareness as to the impact the civil service has on their everyday life. They generally see the civil service as something they do not engage on an everyday basis, except they have to go and pay a license, except they have to go and apply for something, or they have to go and get permission for something, or they have to engage the court system. And so, very often, people who work within both the private and public sector have no idea of the far-reaching impact the job of the civil servant has on their life and their own prosperity. If we are able to appreciate the kind of impact it has, it would then make sense why, as a government, we should make every effort to make our civil servants comfortable and happy, give them the necessary leadership that they need, provide them with a consistent system of discipline, and give them interesting work to do every day that engages their mind, their energy and passion, and so by their effort be able to take Barbados forward. One of the things, when you look at an economy and you look at one of the things that can drag it back, as I said, how the civil service works impacts on that. I just want to give a brief example because I want people to understand why it is important what we are doing today. Mr. Speaker, within your economy, you may have, for example, someone who wishes to start a business. Let's say it's a laundromat. And the person would like to engage 15 workers. They've made their application, they've identified the place in which they're going to operate. They have started a process of interviewing people, looking to bring them on to work, and they've sent off for the goods and equipment that they need to start their business. When that equipment, Mr. Speaker, gets to the port, and there are long delays at the port in clearing that container, if there are licenses that they have to have, if there are inspections they need to have, and those things are delayed, what it means, Mr. Speaker, every week that business is not completed by our civil service to enable our private sector to move forward, you're doing a number of things. You're delaying jobs. Because you are delaying jobs, you're delaying consumption in your economy. Because the business has not started in the way that it should, it is not able to buy supplies, and therefore other businesses suffer. And because they're not generating a profit as yet, government cannot get revenues. Just, sir, because of delays at the port, delays in getting licenses, delays in getting inspections. Therefore, a demotivated civil service, a civil service that has other concerns, because they're not comfortable in the environment, will find that they may not focus in performing those everyday tasks with the speed and dispatch that the economy requires. Therefore, regularizing the status of those workers is one of the means of helping to improve the output and productivity of the service, and therefore fueling growth and energy into your wider economy. That's one of the reasons why it's so important. That is why it's counterproductive to frustrate your civil service. And so, Mr. Speaker, what we have done today, as was shared earlier, this Barbados Labour Party can focus on things large and small. We can deal with the external and the internal. We can walk and chew gum. What we are seeking to do today is to ensure that we do not continue to leave people behind. And when we fail to regularize their status, we are causing a set of civil servants to be left behind. And that would never accord with our philosophy, it will never accord with our values, it will never accord with our heart. One of the things I was very pleased to be able to say, as I shared with you, I had civil servants both in my constituency and in ministries who put the question, when am I going to get appointed? So I'm very happy to be able to report to them that this administration that cares about people, that cares about their well-being, we have taken the step today to regularize their situation. That we are indeed, as is mentioned, to make wrong things right, because it's the honest and right thing to do. And so we can hold our heads up and know that as a government that cares about every citizen, a government that cares about the future of every Barbadian, large and small, regardless of where they find themselves. This act today, we are committing ourselves to moving Barbados and all of its citizens forward. And we're asking the civil service to work with us. We've got a lot of work ahead of us to do. The cabinet under the Prime Minister has made a lot of effort to put things in place to help us weather our COVID. But it will mean changes. It will mean changes in how our civil service works. So we're going to be calling on them to rise to the occasion again. We're going to be calling on them to look at improvements that need to take place in the way in which we do business in the civil service. We're going to be asking of them to participate in the training. We're going to be asking of them to participate in the changing of our processes so that we can be more efficient and accomplish more as a government and therefore accomplish more as a nation. And I would have been embarrassed to have to ask them to so do if we had not done what we did today in ensuring that we've regularized their status. And I trust it would bless them, it would bless their families, it would bless the community, and more importantly, that it would bless the entire nation of Barbados. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, this is, again, another example of this administration following the mantra, a better life for our people. Mr. Speaker, I would be fairly passionate about this because I remember as a young man leaving school that it was under this very Barbados Labour Party that I was employed and then appointed to a position at government industrial schools. And I know from experience how I felt having to be basically at the particular point in time outside of my mom, the next breadwinner in the household. And the security of being able to know that as a young man, I had the opportunity to go to a bank or a credit union or whatever. It was some sort of a secure job that could help to propel me to get the things that I needed. It's extremely, and I can't state it enough, extremely important to me as an individual. So I can understand quite well what this means for those persons who are going to benefit from getting their appointments. And I don't fool myself, because Mr. Speaker, while we sit here and we can pontificate about, how great this is and all of this, and some people could talk about all the problems that they face with changing of governments and other things, there's a constant within the civil service, which I think oftentimes we don't pay a lot of attention to. I think oftentimes we don't celebrate it enough. We can always find the times when we can criticize. But the truth is, administrations will come and go. But those civil servants are the ones who have to carry on the work, regardless of which political party is in. And there comes a time when we as individuals, not as politicians, not as doctors and lawyers and all that, not as that, but as individuals, must be able to recognize the role that the civil service plays. You also need, and I heard one of my colleagues speak about motivating people. We need to be part and parcel of that. We need to let people know that what they do is appreciated. We need also to let them know that what they do is very important to the survival of every single individual on this 166 square miles. And so, Mr. Speaker, I don't even know if I can find the words to describe how I actually feel at this moment. To know that members of my constituency who have been coming to me on a regular basis since 2018 and asking about this very issue, concerned in the current economic situations that we find ourselves in, wondering what will become of them, that we can put all of those fears to rest by making this move that we are making here today. I want to say publicly to those persons who are going to benefit from this, thank you. And I want to say, in whatever department you find yourselves in, thank you for the service that you have given to this country time and time again. Like politicians, it is a thankless job. I know. I used to be in the civil service myself. It is thankless. But we do not come to the world for thanks. We do what we have to do because it is what many of us are called to do. Not that we wake up in the morning and decide that this is what we are going to do. Some people think so. But we are called to do certain things. And you have to do it to the best of your ability, regardless of what may come your way. And so the same way that we can pat each other on the backs as politicians, and I heard a lot of glowing things over the last couple of days, we must also find time to do the same for those persons within the civil service who really continue to do the work that they do at a high level. And so I just wanted to put that out there as a person who knows what it feels like to wake up and to know that there's a bit more security to what you're doing, and puts you in a better position to help your families and in some instances your community at large. And so I believe that those people now can go out and think about it, Mr. Speaker. They can go out, they can go to the credit unions, they can begin to do the little repairs on the homes that they wanted to do. They probably could buy that vehicle that they needed to get in order to get them to the job in a more timely manner. All of these things have little spin-offs. And when human beings are confident, and I don't want people to miss this, because when people are confident, they excel, they're more progressive, they're more productive, and that can only augur well for the society at large. And so this is, in my mind, probably one of the most exciting, but probably one of the most influential things that we've been able to accomplish in the last 2 years. It might not look like one of the sexy things, because I know lots of people like to see things, see that they can touch tangible things. They want to see buildings, they want to see roads fixed, they want to see all of these kind of things. But this, Mr. Speaker, this touches people at the core of their lives. Security, the ability to plan ahead, the ability to see a future. This, to me, is what it is all about when you talk about creating a better life for your people. This is at the root of it, giving people a sense of security and peace of mind. And so I want to commend all of those persons who would have been working on this, because I know this would not have been an easy task, knowing the very numbers, the sheer numbers of people who are going to benefit from this. But I also want to put this out there too, that after this exercise is done, that the next step, if it is for us, to be motivating people to come to work, to do that which you are supposed to do, then, Mr. Speaker, I think if we have to do that also after this, it puts me in a position where I would have to wonder, what more motivation could a person want than to know that they are secure in what they do? It is up for us now to move to the next steps. It is up for us, and when I say us, I talk about not only the persons within this room, I talk about the entire civil service, all aspects of government that have to work together to ensure that the mantra of a better life for our people, is real, and it's real to the people on the ground. The civil servants have a role to play, as they themselves know very well. But we have to ramp it up now in terms of what we do. You know, I sit and I watch what is happening around the world. And Mr. Speaker, as the world becomes more insular, and it is, people are going to speak in pure Bajan parlance that people understand what I'm talking about. Everybody breaking for themselves. Everybody around the world. And it is important that we begin to understand that every single part of government has to see with one focus. That if we're supposed to deliver things to people, doesn't matter what side of any political party they are on, you are going to deliver things to people. It cannot be that the job or the weight of that is only on the people leading the institutions, because the institutions are all connected. They always talk about the chain, links within the chain. They make it either strong or weak. And so therefore, with a step like this, it is incumbent on the other parts of the chain to also deliver to people in a timely manner things that we are supposed to do. Sometimes you can talk about it as customer service, if you want, if that is the easy term. But for me, individually, I always say to people, it is what is inside of your heart? Do you see what you do as being important? Do you see yourself of being part of making positive change for a country that has given you everything that you have? And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that if every single one of us, opposition included, if we see that as what guides us when we come to work, when we go to play, whatever activities that we find ourselves in, then things like this take on a whole different meaning. Takes on a whole different meaning. And I want to appeal to the people of this country. Do not take lightly aspects and moves like this. Like I said before, they might not seem as illustrious as new roads and sky-rise buildings and all of these things. But this act, children benefit, older folks who have to be taken care of by others. I mean, I can spell it out for you, but I don't think I have to. But it is important that we see how important things like this mean to human beings and to their ability to be engaged and also involved in pushing this country forward. And so I support this, and I wouldn't take up any more of your time, Mr. Speaker. Just enough to say that this is, if I were still a singing man, I would probably sing "Oh Happy Day." But seeing that I don't anymore, I would just simply say, on behalf of the people who I represent in St. Philip West that I know who are going to benefit from this, my friends, oh happy day. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honorable Member St. Joseph. Please turn on the mic, sir.
I like the all automatic kinds, you know. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution do not pass.
Questions that the aforementioned resolution do not pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Mr. Speaker.
Order number 15, sir. In the name of the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, to move the passing of a resolution to approve the Public Service Teachers Amendment Order 2020.
Honorable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Public Service Teachers Amendment Order 2020 and the resolution in relation thereto do not pass.
I second that, sir.
Questions that the aforementioned resolution do not pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution do not stands passed.
Order number 1, sir. In the name of the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Investment, to move the second reading of the Representation of the People Amendment Bill 2020.
Honorable Member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I will not be very long with this particular amendment to this very important piece of legislation, the Representation of the People Act, Cap 12. I do, however, want to begin by saying, sir, that this legislation relates to perhaps the single most important exercise that we have the privilege as citizens as Barbadians, as individuals, to carry out. And that is our exercise of and participation in democracy. Sir, many of us will remember, for some of us it was more recently, for some not so recently, but the first opportunity that we had to participate in something that for many of us we long anticipated the opportunity to do. When I reached that age where I could be a part of something that the founders of this Barbados Labour Party fought very hard to allow all of us to be able to do, as new members and owners of a new Barbados. When I first had that opportunity, it was a very exciting morning. And my parents, me being the last of 3 girls, woke us up early and said, it's time. And we all walked up the road. I believe at that time it was the Haggett Hall Pilgrim Holiness Church, and made our mark. At that time in the constituency that is now St. Michael Southeast. And I say all that, sir, to say that the way that we manage and the way that we continue to allow and encourage and facilitate people's exercise and participation in democracy is important. It is perhaps the single most important thing that any government will do and will carry out. And while that practice happens for us on average every 5 years, one of the things that we continue to say and we continue to want to expand is the notion of democracy. The idea of democracy, the fact that it is not, in fact, something that you go and do every 5 years. That, in fact, when a bill goes to Joint Select Committee, when we bring a green paper that then becomes a white paper, when we have numerous consultations on the policy that government is proposing, all of that and citizens' participation in that is a part of the exercise of democracy. And certainly, sir, I have not seen a more consultative and therefore a more democratic administration in this country than this current Barbados Labour Party administration. And much of what we have sought to do, and I dare say we've been able to do, is to demonstrate the fact that democracy is not about one day every 5 years, but is in fact about expanding people's opportunity to be a part of the democratic process, to say what they feel, to be a part of the decision making, to be a part of the information gathering, because we need to know who, in whose name, and what are the characteristics, and what are the needs, and what are the desires of the people whom we represent. And only from that, it is only from that kind of information and that kind of participation that good, sound, effective policy can flow. So, Mr. Speaker, the representation of the people at CAP 12 from 1991 lays out the terms under which people are able to exercise their right to vote in this country. And it covers everything from the management of the National Register of Electors to how that register is transmitted, to who may form a part of that register and related matters. Now, Section 13 of that Act, sir, requires the annual publication of the registers of electors. Section 14 requires the publishing of a revised register and a register for elections, a revised register of foreign service electors, and a register for elections for foreign service electors entitled to vote at any elections. Section 9 of that Act identifies those people who should remain registered as electors and those that are to be deleted from the register of electors. And before I come, sir, to the specific purpose of these small amendments to this bill, I have to say that the gravity and the importance of the exercise of every citizen's exercise of their democratic right and democratic freedom is one that we have to guard very, very carefully and very closely. It is not a small thing. In fact, it is perhaps one of the most grave examples of disenfranchisement that one person can perpetrate against another. It is not a small thing to cause a person not to be able to participate or to exercise their right to vote because of actions that would see them not be represented in the register of electors. So that for whatever reason, a person may seek, through some nefarious activity or some activity that is in fact nefarious but seems to be innocent, cause a person to not be able to exercise that right. And so we have to be vigilant. And we have to set extremely high standards to make sure that no Barbadian or person who is entitled to exercise their democratic freedom is not so disenfranchised. So each year, in accordance with the Section 13 that I previously mentioned, the Electoral and Boundaries Commission publishes a notice that indicates that the register of electors for each of the 30 constituencies is published on January 31st, and it is available for inspection at the offices of the registering officers for the constituencies. So right now that register is available digitally, but when we say available digitally, it's on the laptops of the registering officers, and is available at the constituency registration centers and in hard copy at the public library, as well as at the department's office at Warrens. Now, sir, the question of access is an important one. And in the year 2020, the definition of access must change. Now, just because you print a document and you cause it to be placed at a location does not mean that you have done, arguably, your duty to provide access as we understand it in the year 2020. Sir, this Barbados Labour Party administration has realized that the definition of access and the mandate of enfranchisement means that we have to meet people where they are. It means that through our modernization project, it means that through our work on improving the ease of doing business and through many other initiatives, we have sought to bring Barbados forward into the 21st century and beyond so that we reduce the burden, the cost to everyday Barbadians of doing the things that we now take for granted. So it means that we've made sure that the police certificate of character application and access is now available online. It means that we've gone ministry by ministry, agency by agency, to make sure that we begin the process of digitizing records to make them more accessible, to make them more readable, to mean that we can more closely analyze the data and develop policy from information that is right at our fingertips, but that has not been properly used before. And so, sir, this issue of access with respect to the work of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission is no different. Just like we are moving to an e-planning system in town and country planning so that people can make their applications online, just as we are moving to digital stamping of plans so that you don't have to have a manual stamp and then put the plans back in the post and have people wait weeks to be able to carry on with their business. This, sir, is in the same vein. So not only is it the case that currently the constituency registration centers and the public library and the department's office in Warrens carry hard copy of the register of electors, but the commission also publishes the list of names to be deleted from the register of electors twice yearly. Now, for each deletion, the legislation currently requires the commission to publish the list of names 4 times in the daily newspapers, which amounts to 8 publications per newspaper each year. Sir, another part of the importance of making sure we use less paper, making sure that we move into an online environment, has also to do with our fiscal and financial reality. Now, COVID-19 has meant, sir, that, and we've all gone over the numbers in this honorable place many times in the last few weeks, but it has meant that as an economy that is extremely open for what happens in the external environment, it has meant that as an economy that sees over 40% of its economic activity coming from the tourism sector, that we have estimated as much as a $400 million hit in our revenue. It means that we've had to increase expenditure in social protection so that people who suddenly found themselves separated from their work could survive. It means that we've had to make tremendous expenditure in the retrofitting of Harrison Point and similar facilities. It means that we have increased expenditure in a number of ways while we have not been taking revenue in. So, sir, every cent counts in an environment such as this. And the fact is that notwithstanding the reduced rates agreed with the publication providers, the cost of the annual publication of names, as well as the publishing of the notice relating to the publication of the register of electors, is approximately $482,000. That's no small amount of money. And we have sought in every instance from cabinet, where we no longer carry those very thick files and heaping mounds of paper with us into the cabinet office, but we do our business electronically. We've sought as far as we can to reduce the costs, both financial and environmental, of having to print lots of paper. And we are seeking to be able to make similar efficiency gains across the work and business of government. So not just in order to save on the costs of publication, but also in order to improve access and similarly move the work of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission into an online environment such that people have more ready access to understand, to know, to have exposure to the information that affects their democratic right, that speaks to their franchise as citizens of this country. This would therefore amend the Representation of the People Act, Cap 12, to make better provision for the use of technology in the electoral process, and to make better provision for the distribution of vital information by the Commission through the use of electronic technology. So it means, sir, that there's certain amendments that are required in order to introduce the notion and the idea and the use of technology throughout this act. And I will make very brief reference to the few short amendments. It means, sir, that we require the amendment of Section 2 to change the definition, to introduce a definition of electronic technology, which means an electronic system that has electrical, digital, magnetic, wireless, optical, electromagnetic, and similar capabilities used to create, generate, send, receive, store, display, or otherwise process data and information. It means, sir, that we also need to address the section that relates to the general duties of the Commission, so that we include at B of Section 3.1b, that the Electoral and Boundaries Commission will establish and implement procedures, processes, and practices for the efficient implementation of this act, and where required, the Commission may use electronic technology for the discharge of its functions under this act or under any other enactment giving powers to the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. So Section 9 relates to the right of electors to remain registered. It is something, sir, that Barbadians must and do hold dearly. It is something, as I said, that we have to remain ever vigilant about, because, as we've seen in other jurisdictions, sometimes the desire for influence may overtake, in some people's minds, their understanding of the right and proper functioning of their role and responsibility under the law. And so, with respect to Section 9, the right to remain registered, at 9.2, the Act makes reference to the fact that for the purposes of deleting from the register the names of persons referred to who may have died, who may not be a Foreign Service elector, or who may have become disqualified for registration, the Commission shall first publish once in the Official Gazette and twice at intervals of not less than 7 days apart by way of electronic technology. So it means that it removes, sir, the requirement to have these printed as paper documents, but it also expands the access, sir. It means that there are lower costs of transmission, so nobody has to get in a vehicle to drive to different places to drop off a paper copy of something at the public library or in Warrens. It means that those costs are reduced to the taxpayer, to the Barbadians, sir, that you and I and all honorable members represent in this place. So, sir, the bill goes through the various places, whether Section 13 that relates to the Register of Electors and the revised Register of Electors and how that is to be published, how changes to that are to be made known to the public. And finally, Section 71, which relates to the mutilating, altering of notices, and altering of lists and registers. And it simply inserts in those places reference to the term electronic technology, so that rather than having to spend $482,000 in order to make this information known to the public, that cost is removed. and people have better access to the information that affects their very lives and existence and enfranchisement in this country. But sir, before I wrap up on this matter, I also have to make reference to the matter of altering notices and altering registers. Because the data protection bill that has passed the Senate, and for which there was a joint select committee that saw much consultation with the people of Barbados and with all stakeholders, gives us and allows for the protection of people's information. And so the protection of people's information is not just for the sake of it. The protection of people's information is also about their right to privacy, their right to a reasonable expectation of how that information is to be used, and also their right to remain registered and to remain included and engaged in the electoral process. Now, sir, this is an act that is a few decades old, and at the time, the fine for mutilating and altering notices that related to the register of electors was seen as a simple act of vandalism, of tearing down a list. And so at Section 71 of Cap 12, the Act, in its current form, makes reference to a fine of $250 for that action. But what I want to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, is that this is not a simple act of vandalism of a piece of paper or of a document. And so the bill, in introducing electronic technology to this section, so by saying that any person who, being a member of the public, alters, changes, or modifies any list, register, or document which is published or transmitted by means of electronic technology for use by the public, is guilty of an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $250. That is not just a simple act of removing public property. A person who removes a name, who modifies a name, who makes any change to the list to the register of electors, is committing, I would submit to this honorable place, a very grave offense against the very nature and spirit of democracy in this country. And so just as the Data Protection Bill suggests that for similar misuse of personal information and similar efforts to disenfranchise Barbadians, that the fine be $10,000, we would suggest that by amendment to this bill, sir, that the fine at 2A of 71, as well as 2B, similarly be in the amount of $10,000. This is a serious matter. And we have to send a very serious message that we do not take lightly, and we will not ignore efforts by any party to disenfranchise Barbadians in the exercise of the very thing that we hold dear in this country. So, sir, with these very few words, I believe that while these amendments to this act are few, and while the need to move to electronic transmission and electronic management of these matters for which the Electoral and Boundaries Commission are responsible is not perhaps a very large matter, it is an important one, because it is a part of this administration fulfilling the mandate of enfranchisement and access and inclusion, and sending the message that we believe that democracy is something not to be taken for granted. It's something to be held up, it's something to be held on to and defended. And so with those few words, sir, I move that this I'd like to beg that this bill be read a second time.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, sir. Just a couple of brief comments to use the occasion of the debate on this amendment to the Representation of People Act. And firstly, I would want to take the opportunity to repeat, and not for the first time repeat, call I have made for public financing legislation, elections in Barbados, functioning of political parties in Barbados. In fact, I do recall that the honorable member who last spoke in one of her more recent submissions also made a call for campaign financing, electoral financing. I would like to put it in a broader frame. I think the honorable member who last spoke also rightly identified democracy as a value that we hold dear, want to cherish, and one identified by her also as not being one which should not be taken for granted. There's a cost. There's a cost attaching to the practice of democracy. There is a cost attaching to the preservation of democracy. But I think the price can never be too high. I heard this reflection offered in recent days. It is something to which I really do subscribe.
Honorable member speaks to change this. $10,000.
And that is, we cannot pursue positive development and in a proper and truly meaningful fashion unless we do so in the context of democracy, democratic practice. Hence, Mr. Speaker, the name attributed to the most recently established party in Barbados, People's Party for Democracy and Development, or more popularly known as the People's Party, PDP. We believe in that. Democracy has a cost that attaches to it, to establish, to practice, to preserve it.